So,
all right.
So the pro for me, open carry is the first target, and therefore that allows me to then assess the threat. Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey, Lead, and Steel. Feelings hurt while you wait.
They're gonna get fucking hurt.
This is the official podcast of Aggressive Defensive Solutions. I'm Lee Curling, and this is Rick Sutton, my co-host today, and we're going to talk about open carry, the pros and cons. It's probably going to be a slightly shorter episode, but you know, we just need to press the button and start recording because we need to get going.
And since we're talking about pros and cons of open carry, language disclaimer on this one, because there's likely to be strong language based on the passion that we feel for this. So, Lee, can you list any fucking pros for open carry? Legitimate ones.
Pro for who? The carrier or for me?
Oh my God.
The other guy in the room.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
So the pro for me is that the open carry is the first target, and therefore that allows me to then assess the threat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about fact. So I don't want to throw rocks at people. So here's the deal.
Wait. No, you're throwing rocks. You've already thrown rocks.
Fair enough. All right. So to lessen the impact of the rocks that I threw, here's the deal. So a lot of places have open carry laws. The lovely and sovereign Commonwealth of Virginia, where America was invented, being one of them. Which I think you should have to say it that way all the time anyway. But anyway.
Okay.
So they have this whole open carry thing, right? And I've heard people tell me for years that, well, I open carry because it's my right, and I'm going to open carry, and it's a good idea, and that way I don't have to get a concealed weapons permit. And this way, I will prevent crimes by open carrying.
So the thought there is, because a bad guy knows I have a gun, therefore they're not going to do anything.
And there is likely to be, all joking aside, there's likely to be some of that happens.
Yes.
Okay.
I will agree with that. So in the pro column is yes, you being there with a gun may then deter a bad guy who is looking for, I would say, a target of opportunity.
Target of opportunity.
Right? Or is unarmed himself.
Mm-hmm. And or some guy who, for lack of a better phrase, is just an asshole and is going to be kept in check from being a bully because you're armed. There is some of that. I mean, there is some tongue-in-cheek truth to a well-armed society is a polite society, right? Because if you're an asshole, you might stop short of getting into an argument with somebody or threatening them if you realize that they're armed and it could go kinetic. So yes, that is a legitimate pro there. And I'm sure that there have been instances where a guy who's carrying a gun has been a visual and physical deterrent to somebody engaging in a crime of opportunity. However, two issues with that. The first issue with that is probably 5% of the open carry people that I have observed in my career and in my life wandering around out here have had quality weapons, quality holsters, and carried their weapon in such a manner that led me to believe that they were competent with it. And then the other 95% of them looked like jackwagon bubbas carrying some hog leg in some bullshit holster in such a manner as to show what a badass they are. They're carrying a gun. And those guys aren't doing anybody any good.
So I'm going to stop because I'm going to give a very recent example. And you go back a couple of years, right, in Virginia, and I guess across the United States, across the board, where we had the big push, right, carrying guns and, whole protect the Second Amendment and A lot of people carry them back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is something that
Political statement.
probably within the last month, I was out with my wife and son, right? And younger individual comes in, younger than me, because I'm you know, of course I guess I'm young myself, right? No, okay.
Not compared to me.
I'm kidding. So younger guy comes in, you know, probably mid-20s.
I was gonna say he was in his 40s, wasn't he?
Carrying a Glock on his side, open carrying, and proceeds to sit down with his back to the door.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, and it's he has back to the door, with his gun side in the walkway.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean,
that's a prepared individual.
He's
going to make a difference.
Mm-hmm. So as I said, I don't have a problem, obviously, with anyone carrying. I don't have a problem with anybody specifically open carrying.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are putting yourself into a position as an open carrier where you are not paying attention to what's going on around you, and you are presenting your weapon, you're
A jackass.
You're contributing to the problem, right?
I.e.,
you're a jackass.
you're a jackass.
Yeah.
Well, so tying in with that, I'll borrow a phrase from a friend of mine, who is often fond of saying, just because you can do something does not mean that you should do something, right? So
Absolutely.
So the whole open carry thing, I get it. It's a legal right, and it's your thing. Have at it. The problem is, from my perspective, after spending 3 decades as a cop, if you're open carrying and you are in wherever, you're in 7-Eleven, you're in a bank, you're wherever you happen to be, and you're open carrying, and the bad guy or bad guys have predetermined that they are committing this crime here and now, that's going to happen. They probably didn't come in with their guns out, which means that if you're not paying attention, you haven't picked up, and you haven't started the whole Cooper color code cascade, right? Which means that everybody will know that the crime is occurring when the bad guys shoot the open carry guy in the back of the head first.
Right.
Because one of the things that I did to figure out how to prevent crimes and catch criminals was figure out what's the best way to commit a crime. And if I'm going to commit a robbery in a convenience store and I've decided, yeah, this place is getting robbed, I'm walking out with the cash, and I walk in and there's Bubba with his Uncle Mike's holster and his Taurus, 380. I start the dance by walking up behind him and shooting him and taking his gun and then moving on about my business, right? So I tell people all the time when I train with them, nobody should know that you have a firearm until they see the muzzle blossom and feel the impact, right? Because it might be a visual deterrent, but it might also be the thing that draws fire to you first. And like you said, tongue in cheek at the beginning of it, I don't go anywhere without a gun. And it's almost, unless I'm on the range, it's concealed. And so when I walk in and I see that somebody's open carrying, the first thing I do is pay attention to how they're conducting themselves. And if they seem like they know what they're doing, other than they're open carrying, then I go, all right. And then I check the rest of the room and I start looking to see how, if things go bad, if it turns kinetic, I can be a force multiplier. But if not, if they're just going on about their business, that's not helping. And I'm going to throw a rock at this one. It's a pet peeve of mine for when I was a detective. When I was a uniformed patrol officer, and I was wearing a uniform that clearly identified me as a police officer, and body armor, and a 15-pound gun belt with all of the extra weapons and all the other shit that goes along with it, I was openly carrying. because it was part of the uniform and everybody understood that, and it is what it is. But when I was a detective, I did not walk around with everybody knowing that I was carrying a gun, right? I by policy, I carried a gun, and I carried my badge on my belt next to my gun, and then I wore a jacket, either a sports coat or a light jacket or whatever, and I did my best to conceal my weapon so that if I was in 7-Eleven or if I was having dinner, nobody knew that I had a gun, right? And then I was still engaged in situational awareness, but I wasn't automatically a target. I see police officers, detectives, I guess off-duty police officers, I don't know, walking around these days with their gun stuck out, wearing soft clothes, not concealing their weapon, and then they're conducting themselves either like they're not armed or like they're in uniform, and it's an entirely different aspect. And it's a pet peeve of mine, and I don't see any real pros to that. I guess if you're a police officer and you need the world to know that you're a police officer, then have at it. But that falls in line with, and they're like, my dad's one of these guys who's a liberal, who goes, yeah, these redneck crackers out here carrying their open guns so that everybody knows that they've got a gun so that they are somebody. Well, I don't think everybody who open carries for that purpose.
No.
But I got to concede the point that there are some out there that are. And those folks are problematic, and they're jackasses, and they're not helping the cause. It's like years ago, when everybody was down and bitching about gun shows, right? I never got interviewed coming out of a gun show. I don't think you ever got interviewed back. Who they interviewed? They interviewed the dude who was 400 pounds. He's wearing a "Kill 'em all, let God sort 'em out" t-shirt. He's carrying like an old busted ass Dragunov over his shoulder. He's wearing camouflage pants that don't fit, and he's like wearing flip-flops. And he's railing about the goddamn Clintons, and they're gonna take our guns, and we gotta shoot the black helicopters. Yeah, that's not the vast majority of gun owners, but that's who they interview. When they start talking to open carry gun people, they very rarely come to people like you and I. Of course, we're not carrying our guns open, right? So they go talk to some jackass. Now, that said, if you are exercising your right to carry your firearm openly, and you are or just as if you're exercising your right to free speech and you're saying something that I don't agree with, or you're exercising your right to freedom of assemble and I don't agree with why you're assembling, that's your right. And I would not ever want to see I would never want to see a law passed that prevents you from doing that. Just like I would never support a law that prevents you from burning the American flag. I think if you do that, you're an asshole, okay? And you probably ought not do that specific activity within arm's reach of me.
Right.
But I would not want a law that says you can't do it, because I think that flies in the face of our Constitution. That's my thoughts.
So
are there cons to open carry?
So,
I couldn't find any pros. What are the cons? It'll get hung up. It'll get hung up on your stool while you're drinking beer, watching NASCAR. Yeah.
Because the guy I was talking about earlier, yeah, he was drinking.
He's an asshole.
So
he's an asshole.
So again, and I think that actually drives all the way back to what you were saying. Talk about the Cooper Collar Code, right? If he's out there with his back to everyone, because he's in the corner, right? He's in the corner booth, and with his back to the door, with his gun presented out to the walkway, drinking a beer, he is green, right? Absolutely, and maybe we'll talk about Cooper Color Code for people, at some point in the future. But if hopefully you understand that he's just white, right? He's not even on green, right? He's sitting in this house. It's like me sitting at the house drinking bourbon, right? Yeah, I just I agree with you on it's a right, and that right is not predicated on you
being smart.
Yeah. No, I'm struggling on this one on how you even go about that, because the right's not predicated on you being well trained, you paying attention to your surroundings, you protecting your gun from bad guys getting it, any of those things. But if you are going to carry a gun openly, I personally feel that you should be personally and morally obligated to paying attention to your surroundings. If you say you're carrying a gun because I'm going to protect other people, right? If you are not paying attention to your surroundings, you're not actually out there to protect other people.
No.
Right? You then start to fall into that. I'm carrying a gun because I want to look like somebody, right? I want to look like a badass, right? That's So again, to wrap around there, if you're carrying a gun and you want to open carry, then just pay attention to surroundings. Do it right. Don't be the first victim.
Yeah.
Because that's first thing to me about the guy carrying a gun is the guy open carrying a gun is the first victim.
Yeah. If you're carrying a firearm for any purpose, but specifically for defensive purposes, you need to be on your game and you need to be paying attention. And if you're carrying a gun openly, you need to be even more so. You need to be absolutely vigilant, because
it ramps that up.
You can't take a second off.
Right. It just ramps that whole thing up.
Yeah.
And it's back when we used to train the Commonwealth Attorney's Office.
Yep.
It was one of the things we always told them, that a gun is not a threat.
Nope.
Right. Is not to be employed as a threat.
No.
And same thing. If you're carrying this gun and you think, well, I'm going to pull it out because this guy, and I can threaten them, and then and then they're going to go away.
Yeah.
Right. No. You're going to present that weapon after you've made the decision that I am going to shoot this guy.
Unless you're a law enforcement or security professional, you are hard pressed to justify pointing a gun at another person and not pulling the trigger.
Right.
Quite honestly.
Right. And you can say, hey, I was justified. I'd made the decision, but when I presented the weapon, they unasked the X. They unasked the X, right? But the reality is, that's not likely. That's not the likely scenario.
Nope.
And I think you exacerbate the potential issue with that by open carrying of that, right? I mean, because if someone's going to start bothering you and you're open carrying, there's bad things are about to happen.
Yeah, and and that,
potentially for both of you.
Yeah, and that's a whole thing that led into this too. So one of the things that I looked at, Dave Newby, rest his soul, when I worked from the sheriff's office, he told me a thing one time that was pretty intense. He said, if you're a uniformed, obviously armed law enforcement officer, and somebody attacks you, not they're trying to get away from you while you arrest them, but they are aggressing you, you can make the assumption that they mean you harm.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
your actions can be justified from there. So if you're open carrying and somebody decides to pick an argument with you, they have probably already taken into account the fact that you're armed, and they either don't see you as a threat, or they're testing the waters and seeing where they can go. And that's a very dangerous position for you as a gun carrying person to be. And if you get into an argument, and then that's one of those things that it snowballs, because if you're not paying attention, if you're carrying a gun, you're not paying attention, and it gets verbal, and then it almost gets physical, and now you feel intimidated. Now where are you going to go? Right. We've talked about in the past, you can't start the argument that leads to the fist fight, that leads to the deadly force encounter, and claim self-defense.
Absolutely.
Right.
So
if you're carrying your gun openly, you better be absolutely quiet. You better keep your mouth shut, and you better not, point out that guy who stole your parking space is a jackass.
Right.
Because if he gets out and challenges you and then it goes kinetic, you're losing.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's going to happen.
Right.
And so I think a lot of it comes back to, I think a lot of the whole open carry thing comes back to lack of training / education. And as a result of that, a lack of preparedness for forward thinking. I'm going to get my gun, I'm going to carry my gun, and then if there's a problem, I'll have my gun so I can deal with it, or I'll have my gun so there won't be a problem, as opposed to most folks who carry their weapons concealed, who've gotten some training, who go, okay, I'm carrying my gun and I hope that nothing bad happens. I'm going to keep my eyes and ears open, and if something goes bad, when it crosses the line, I'll be prepared. And those are the people who pay attention at intersections and don't run red lights. And those are the people who don't go out and, go to sketchy places where they're likely to get into a conflict in the first place. Right. So that's my thoughts on pros and cons of carrying open carry. My thoughts for what they're worth. What about you? You seemed way nicer about it. Yeah, I don't think you called anybody a jackass, did you?
Yeah, just once.
Okay.
Just once. Yeah, no, listen, folks, we spun Rick up and we let him go, and he had about a 20-some minute rant, I think.
Hopefully
I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure. Hopefully you're not only, if your feelings got hurt, hopefully you actually take something from it. So it is an interesting discussion, and people feel pretty.
And if you disagree with us, feel free to shoot us an email at info@agdefsol.com and tell us why you disagree with us. And if it is well thought out and it's not just gibberish calling us jackasses, we'll put it up on a future podcast and discuss it. And if you want to leave it anonymous, you can do it anonymous. Or if you've got the stones to put your name on it, have at it. Because I put my name on what I got out here. I probably hurt somebody's feelings with that, didn't I?
Hey, all right, guys. I think we're gonna call it a day for that one. So, hey, join us next time. I'm not even gonna give the hopefully you didn't get your feelings hurt too much, because
hope you found it entertaining.
Hopefully you did find it entertaining. All right, we'll talk to you next time.
Be safe. Which means that everybody will know that the crime is occurring when the bad guys shoot the open carry guy in the back of the head first.